Hello foodie friends! So I'm really excited about this week because we're going to venture away from the Titanic, but just a little bit, because we're going to go ahead and talk about her sister ship, the RMS Olympic, which actually had a long and illustrious career. So we're going to go ahead first and see what the food was like in third class. Now, during the early 1900s, when she first started her career, Irish immigrants were pouring from the old world into the new. And so Irish stew featured heavily in third class menus on the Olympic. So that's actually what we're going to make today, a very traditional Irish stew. Although, according to Wikipedia, what is traditional is often contested. So I kind of just went with one that had some elements of everything that was sort of like agreed upon. So we're gonna go ahead and turn this camera around, but first I'm gonna go ahead and give you a very short history of the Olympic and part of her career, and then we're gonna start cooking.
The RMS Olympic's keel was laid down in the Harland and Wolff shipyard in 1908. It took roughly 2 years to finish the Olympic, and she was launched in Belfast on October 20th, 1910. A reporter from the Southampton Times called her, quote, "a wonderful demonstration of the rapid strides that have been made in modern shipbuilding." They noted that, quote, "nothing had been left to chance. Everything has been carefully thought out and skillfully planned, and in many cases completely revised down to the most minute details." Another reporter noted, "She was not built to fail. A higher destiny awaits her." And they were right. And unlike her sister ship, the Olympic's maiden voyage in June of 1911 went off without a hitch. It was Captain Edward Smith who took her out on her maiden voyage. And also Thomas Andrews, the architect, was on board, making his notes as to any improvements that could be made for both passengers and crew comforts. A year later, both men would fulfill the same roles on the Titanic's maiden voyage, and unfortunately, both would be lost. She did have one run of bad luck, as in September of 1911, as she was proceeding down Southampton water, she actually collided with the British Navy vessel HMS Hawke, causing considerable damage, but fortunately no loss of life. By 1915, she was acquisitioned into a troop transport ship for World War I, painted in dazzle paint to confuse German submarines and outfitted with guns. By the end of the war, she had earned the nickname Old Reliable for steaming 240 persons through enemy-infested waters without a single loss of life. Now we're going to go ahead and get our stew ready by giving our vegetables a peel and a rough chop. And go ahead and put them in separate bowls. So you'll put your carrots and onions in one and your potatoes in another. And now third class on the Olympic was almost exactly the same as on Titanic. They would have had the same revolutionary good service, good food, and even be provided with their own clean linens and towels. But of course, everything was segregated on these ships. And not only were you segregated by class and prevented by gates and stewards from crossing into other classes, you were also segregated based on sex and whether you were married or not. The Olympics dining room was actually separated into 2 different rooms. It was bright, cheerful, had actual portholes, used fresh, clean tablecloths, and each person had their own place setting. However, you would have been separated according to your status. So families and single women would eat in one room, and single men would eat in the other. It was just like your sleeping accommodations. If you were third class, all the single men would have been segregated into the bow section of the ship, while families and single women would have been housed in the stern. Now we'll go ahead and get our meat ready. You're just going to do the same as you did with the vegetables. Give it a rough chop into however small or large pieces you'd like to keep it. I went ahead and trimmed off some of the fat, but of course that's personal preference. Now go ahead and season your meat with salt and pepper, and we'll get it ready for the pot. Now in a large pot, go ahead and heat up your oil. Add your meat, and we're going to go ahead and brown it on all sides. So make sure you watch it and turn it as needed. And that sizzle lets you know that you're fixing to be the recipient of some good eating. Now you're going to take the meat out of the pot, but go ahead and leave the oil and the brown bits. We'll add the carrots and onions and go ahead and season that with salt and pepper also. And now you'll let them cook for about 5 minutes until they have a nice brown color on the outside. And right about now, your kitchen should be filled with some delectable and savory aromas. Now once your vegetables are nice and done, we'll go ahead and add our meat back to the pot. Go ahead and give that a good stir, and just remember to savor the mouth-watering wonderfulness that's in your pot. Now go ahead and add your beef broth. And of course you can make your own beef broth, but this time I opted for convenience. Don't forget to add your thyme. And now you can place your potatoes on top, which you will also season with salt and pepper. Now this seems like a lot, but I promise the end result is not too salty or too peppery. It actually ends up being just right. Now you'll place it in a 350-degree oven for about 1 hour. This may seem like a lot, but the end result is so worth the wait. The meat is fork tender and the vegetables are cooked to perfection. And now you're ready to serve this hearty meal. And think about the many thousands of immigrants it nourished as the Olympic brought them from the old world to the new.
All right, I am really excited for this because it smells wonderful and I'm really hungry. So let's just go ahead and dig in. Okay, vegetables are really good.
The lamb is like melt in your mouth. Like,
oh my gosh, yes. Okay, so it is so tender. I can see why this is the national dish of Ireland.
yeah.
Because it is really, really good. Now, like I said, kind of hinted at the beginning, there's a lot of different incarnations of this dish. Like, you can add turnips if you want to. Some people will put, like, Guinness beer in it and stuff like that. So there's all kinds of different layers you can do.
So this is more of, like, the base version.
This, yeah.
And then they would just kind of add to it, or...
One of the base versions is just potatoes and lamb. Without the so carrots and onions is kind of like the fancy traditional version. From what I could understand, just like reading about the history of it, I'm guessing that this is something that would have been more served on the Olympic because they had copious amounts of carrots and onions and potatoes in the cargo hold, so there would have been no reason for them to just serve them
the
potatoes and lamb. Yeah. So I'm guessing this was like a more well-rounded version that became popular later and would had ended up in the Olympics repertoire.
Yeah. It'd be interesting to try it even with like a cheaper cut of meat to see if it's just as tender or if it's a product of it, the fact that it's lamb or not.
Yeah,
you know
I mean, a lot of Americans, when, and this kind of goes back to some of our other episodes in which we've had lamb featured on there, where we've talked about how expensive lamb is in America. So when the Irish immigrants first came over here, when they got here, they realized there really weren't like sheep farmers.
No.
You know, we were more beef cattle kind of people.
Buffalo.
Yeah, and so they actually substituted beef for, you know, the lamb. So which is why in America, if you see Irish stew, it will
Often
almost
have beef.
always have beef in it. Yeah. And I mean, there's a reason, you know, it's just expense.
Yeah.
Basically, you know.
Lamb is probably a lot cheaper in Ireland.
Yeah, lamb is really a lot cheaper in the UK than it is over here. So over there, I'm assuming they, you know, still serve it the traditional way.
Right.
And then, you know, people of Irish descent here use beef.
Okay.
You know, so
But either
if
way,
you,
I mean, it's really good. Like, it's got a lot of
it's
well-balanced flavor. The meat is really tender.
Yes.
The vegetables are cooked, like, perfectly.
Oh my gosh,
Yeah.
yes. For just having thyme, salt, and pepper,
Oh, yeah.
you wouldn't know that, would you? I mean, it's so well-rounded and savory and so good. This, to me, is like the perfect winter, early spring
Stew.
Yeah, you know, we're actually kind of experiencing a little bit of cold weather now in
So it
East
works.
Tennessee.
Yeah.
So this actually is a really good day for us to eat this.
Yeah.
It warms the soul. That's what I feel like. I mean, it's just so I can see why this would have been on the Olympics menu quite a bit.
Yeah.
Because this probably would have been a very popular dish. Having said that, it should be popular in America now. And I mean, it probably is in a large, large parts of America, where there's still like a lot of Irish descendants.
I would say it's not, like, if you replace it with, like, beef instead of lamb, it's not far off a traditional beef stew either.
No, it
So
isn't.
you could argue that it is kind of.
Yeah, I guess it is.
It's just kind of like slightly different permutations of the same dish.
Yeah, I would say I'm kind of basing that on the rustic simplicity of this dish, because if you notice how I was cutting the vegetables,
not a lot of work.
No, you're just rough chopping. You're just, I mean, salt, pepper, thyme, and a rough chop.
Yeah.
Like, that's a really good, easy dinner that's actually still going to taste good.
Yeah. I mean, obviously, for something like any kind of soup or stew, the longer it sits and cooks itself, it's going to be a little bit better. All the taste.
Oh, heck yeah. Yeah.
So you've got, like, that time factor.
Definitely.
Maybe
Don't skimp on the oven.
Yeah, maybe something that, like, you could do the day before for, like, a whole week's worth of food if you had, like...
Oh, yeah.
You know what I mean?
Could,
like, dinners or something.
You could have this for lunch for a few days. So, yeah, I mean, I don't know really what else to say about it except try it, because you're gonna love this. Now, for next week, we're gonna change directions a little bit, because we're gonna go out of savory foods and we're gonna go into dessert, which I'm really excited about. This is gonna be a dessert that was served on the Olympic, and it was pretty popular. Like, it seems like it was rotated on the menu quite a bit, because you're reusing, like, stale bread.
Oh, okay.
So you can imagine on a ship, you know, you're kind of needing things that can use up, I wouldn't say leftovers, I would just say like loaves of bread that didn't get eaten the day of.
Yeah.
You know, the day after, you know, you kind of want something to change it into something else without wasting it.
Right.
So, you know, this is a dessert that would have used up like quite a bit of their leftovers. Yeah. And it would have been something that hopefully is still tasty. I've actually never tried it. I've never heard of this dessert before, but we're gonna do it, and we're gonna keep our fingers crossed. It looks good. So we're gonna try that. So stay tuned for that. We'll also have another Titanic dessert on our next tea time. And that one looks really good too. Can't wait to sink my teeth into that one. So we're gonna go ahead and wrap this up so we can eat, and really hope that you enjoyed this foray into Olympic history. And stay tuned, because we'll continue her story next week and kind of give you a wrap up at the end of her life. So stay tuned for that. We'll see you later. Bye.
Thank you for watching this video, and if you like historical and literary-based recipes, I have plenty more for you. And don't forget to like and subscribe. See you next time.